Watching this horse walk from behind, initially we can see his barrow only on the left side, but then we can see it on both sides. So this horse is pretty straight. Both sides of his pelvis move equally, and we don't see him do any swinging movements or side bending movements. Now looking at his hips, these are probably externally rotated because we can see that he has a narrower base and his hocks are coming near each other. And his stifles, as they move, we can see them pointing outside. Now the hocks, as we said, are a bit close together, and as he walks, they make accessory movements as soon as he hits the ground. His distal limbs are stepping close together, and we can see that he brings his right hind towards the midline when he walks. He does that with the left one as well, but not as much. So to do that, he does paddling, a little bit of a paddling motion forward. So each hind limb has to make like a little arc around the other one to step forward. From the front, we can see again his body's pretty straight. His neck is a bit towards the left side, but that's probably because he's looking at his handler. And ideally, we would like to see the handler leading the horse from the offside to check if this is a true bending towards the left or he's just looking at the handler. Then we're going to have a look at the shoulders. He seems, they seem to be equal in size and movement. We don't see any concussion going on. And then going further down to his carpi, these look pretty straight, facing forwards, and so are the distal limbs. He steps on the ground on the lateral wall of the hoof, and that's because he has a narrow base at the front as well, so his forelimbs are brought closer together. Now, if we're going to have a look at the left side of the horse, we can see his head and neck is in neutral position and moving rhythmically with the walk. His thoracic and lumbar spine move so he doesn't seem stiff. And so is his pelvis, moving rhythmically into flexion and extension, or nutation, counter nutation. Although from this side, he might have a little bit of a side bending movement to the right. Now, looking at the forelimbs, we can see on the left shoulder that there is some tension on the muscles going on there. We can see that the steps taken by the forelimbs initially appear equal, but then when we see more carefully, I think the right forelimb is taking quicker steps and smaller ones. But that's not happening all the time. It happens only on a few steps. So this might have something to do with hind limbs, but we'll see that in a minute. In the forelimbs, the carpi and distal limbs have nothing much to note. And so we'll have a look at the hind limbs. Now here, the strides are a bit uneven. So we can see that although the left one takes a bigger stride, then the right one hurries and steps with bigger concussion on the ground. Looking at the left stifle, we can see it from the side pointing out when it flexes. And then it looks like when it comes forward and touches the ground, it looks like almost like hyperextending. The hocks flex and extend fine, but as we noticed, it seems that there is more concussion going through the right hind limb because the stance phase of the left one is smaller. And we're going to switch to the right side. Here, again, head and neck in neutral position, moving rhythmically, although we can see a bit of tension on the dorsal muscles going on. The thoracic spine moves, flexes and extends, and from side to side. However, there's still a little impression that he's rushing the left forelimb forward. So the right forelimb is taking smaller steps. It doesn't happen in all the steps, but in some. And we see a lot of tension in the shoulder area, and we can see that the shoulder doesn't move as freely as the other side. And we can see that the shoulder joint doesn't really extend and probably doesn't flex much. And the scapula and the humerus move as one piece. They don't have enough movement between them. So the carpus and the distal limb, to compensate for that, have to move in a slightly higher arc than the left. Now the hind limbs, we can see that they don't take equal strides. The right one is rushed forward, rushed to step on the ground, and the horse is using the right hind limb to push himself forward, so to propel as much as he can with the right one. So that's why we can see a little bit here and here, a little bit of tension on the hamstrings on the right hind limb. And if we see more closely, we see that when the left hind is on the ground, the horse puts some more weight on the forelimbs and extends his spine to move the hind limbs forwards instead of flexing the joints of the hind limbs more.